And, I said to him, before you make an offer to me and before I think about accepting, can I work in the company for a week for free?
Welcome to the Exploring Washington State podcast. Here's your host, Scott Cowan.
So my guest today is Howard Behar. First off, thank you for being patient with technology, Howard, as we got this sorted out so we could do this. I appreciate that, but I would love it if you would just tell our audience. Who's giving you a call?
That was Dave Olson, as a matter of fact.
Oh my gosh. I do. Oh my gosh. So I guess let's start with this question, because you're known for Starbucks coffee. What was the process for you to get started at Starbucks? And we'll call that your introduction. So how did you get started working at Starbucks?
Well, I was about my mid 40s and I needed a job. I had been a president of a land development company in the Seattle area, and I started looking for a small company to buy. I was trying to, do something on my own. And I met Howard Schultz right out of the gate. And after I left this company, and we talked to each other, but he didn't feel the fit was right. And I was trying to buy a company, and a year passed and he was still looking for somebody to be VP of operations for the company. And I said to him, before you make an offer to me and before I think about accepting, can I work in the company for a week for free? Let me just work. And I worked in the plant. I worked in the stores. I worked on the trucks. And after that first week, I fell in love. And I said, well, if you want me, I'd like to join Starbucks. And that's how it happened. I turned right instead of turning left. And I never in my wildest dreams did I ever expect Starbucks to become what it's become. I mean, I could have predicted that.
So now I have to ask a question, because when I started at Starbucks, I was brought in to work in the IT department. So, okay. One thing that I thought was amazing at that time, and maybe you were the root cause of it, they required us to go to coffee class. I had to take 40 hours of coffee, and then I had to do a shift in the store.
Right.
Was that a byproduct of your experience where you actually went and worked in the plant?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I always felt that people needed to. I mean, the stores are where everything happened. It wasn't that all the rest of our work wasn't important. It was. IT was important. Accounting was important. Law, legal, all those things were important. But everything began and ended in the store. And you needed to understand the people that worked in the stores and the business itself. And that was the only way to do it.
Yeah. One memory that sticks out to me about my coffee training class was, first off, one of the reasons I wanted to work at Starbucks is because I love coffee. And so I was like, well, what better place to work than a place that serves a lot of coffee? And, I've been told that, well, we won't, I was told when I went in for my interview and they gave me a tour of the building of the SSC, and, the coffee centers on every floor. And it was like, oh my gosh, this is unbelievable. But I'm in this class and we're being taught, the origins of coffee and all of this stuff, which was absolutely fascinating to me. And one person raises their hand and they go, I don't like coffee. And I was just like, why are you here? I mean, it was so funny to me. Like, I don't like coffee. And I'm like, oh my gosh. But for me, that was an amazing part of the journey for me so that was a byproduct of your initial coming on board, was you wanted to check the company out before you went. And I think that's amazing.
How could you know anything, until you work in the place? And, it gave me, after that week, I said, this is my place.
Okay. So from there, so you joined the company, and what was your job progression from when you started to you ended up on the board of directors, right?
Well, it was at that time when I joined, there were 28 stores. So, VP of operations was pretty VP of a fairly small company, compared to how it grew. And so my progression went from VP of operations to VP of sales and operations, where I had the retail business and the wholesale business reporting to me. And then I went to EVP, and I had everything that human resources and everything that touched the customer.
Wow. Okay.
And I became president of Starbucks North America, and then I became founding president of Starbucks International. And then I came back after I retired once. Then I went on the board when I became president of Starbucks North America, and then I retired once. It was too early for me to retire, and then just out of sheer whatever luck, I guess you might say, I got the invitation to come back for a few months to lead North America again as president. And it was kind of just, I grew as the company grew, and I had to grow. I had to change a lot. In the beginning, I could touch everything. After a while, I couldn't touch anything, hardly. And so I realized that my day job was the people. My night job was the business.
Okay.
I just focused on the people side of the business. And, first of all, growing me as a people, and then trying to grow the people in the organization.
So in 2021, Starbucks is considered, a global company. Yeah. It's on it. All outward facing indications are extremely successful and all of those things. We're not here to talk about that really, but there was an article I read, and I thought this was fascinating. And at the time that you came on with only 28 stores, Starbucks was just located in Washington State, or had they branched out yet into the Northwest, or was it just
the month I joined, we opened in Portland.
In Portland. Okay.
Yeah. I joined in August, and September we opened in Portland, but we already had a couple of stores in Vancouver, British Columbia, and a few stores in Chicago.
But okay. So you say Chicago. So that there was a reference though that you ended up moving to Chicago.
Yeah.
So
I moved for 3 months because Chicago was losing money, and the venture capital money was saying, hey, this is just a Northwest deal. This isn't going to work anyplace else because Chicago was losing money. So I said, I got to figure it out. So the only way I knew how to do it is to go work in the stores. And that's what I did every day for 3 months. And it's because I wanted to experience firsthand what was going on and see if there was a difference. And I came back from that experience saying that the problem is that people don't know us in Chicago. We need to open more stores. That was number one. Number two, we needed to raise prices because our costs of operating in Chicago were a hell of a lot higher than operating in Seattle. But what I sensed is that the people that were coming into the store were the same kind of people that were coming into the stores in Seattle. They were saying the same thing. They appreciated the same thing. So I had confidence that it was going to work. We just had to make some adjustments. And we opened a bunch of new stores, and that started the drumbeat more in Chicago. And we raised prices, and that helped offset the increased costs.
How did you get the venture capitalists, though, who say it's a Northwest thing, and you come back to them and say, okay, it's going to work, but we need more stores? How did you guys manage that? Well,
just by raising the prices, that helped us a lot to matching the cost of doing business there. But, we still had cash so we could open stores. So we just opened about 10 stores, and boom, it just took off.
It just took off. Okay.
Yeah.
I when I read that I was so impressed that you went to Chicago to ensure that you did everything you could to ensure the Chicago market was going to be successful.
The only way I know how to do things is to do them hands-on, to be there, to help, to do it. Doing it from a distance doesn't work.
Then you were instrumental in opening up the international markets for Starbucks.
Yeah.
Correct? I can't imagine that it went flawlessly.
No.
I have to imagine that there were.
Our guy, you know that?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. There must be a story that you can share. What surprised you about opening in the international that you thought might have went better or worse, but you were surprised by it?
Well, I guess I don't know if I would call it surprised. I was unprepared for. I was always a relationship person, always a people guy, but I was unprepared for how deep that was in particularly the Asian markets that we went to first. And Jinlong Wang, who was my right arm, he was from China, and he sent me a quote one day. He said, "Big noise and stairs, nothing coming down." And he was talking about me, and so I had to adjust my expectations. Things weren't going to move as fast as I thought they should move, and so I had to understand that the most important thing I was going to do there was to build relationships, and that may take time to do it. And so I had to change myself. The other thing, one thing that did surprise me was the difficulty in many markets of opening stores. I mean, every country has its own stuff. We have our own blocks, we have our own protection mechanisms, and every country had its own. And Japan, being our first market, had a lot of them that were unwritten, a lot of them. You just had to learn them as you went, and nobody would necessarily tell you about them until you asked the question. And, we had like the espresso machine, the La Marzocco, that we imported from Italy. In order to get that into Japan, we had to basically tear it apart, have every screw tested, all the metal tested, everything, all the plastics that were in that thing tested, right, in order to get it imported. And, not that there was anything wrong with it or anything. It was a piece of machinery, but those were part of the rules. And so, yeah, I pushed back on that in the beginning, but I wasn't going to change that. And I finally said, I can't push back. We got to be the best at this. We got to be better than the Japanese companies are at complying with all the rules and the regulations. And so once we got used to doing that, we did that in every country, and that helped us. So that was probably the biggest surprise, is how difficult it was going to be. I didn't think that would be the issue. I thought opening stores would be easy. Getting them open would be easy. But the difficulty would be attracting the customers. But it was the opposite.
Just the opposite.
Customers came rolling in, and, but opening stores, particularly at the beginning of it, was difficult.
So I'd like to clarify something. So when you said you had to have the machine tested, did just one machine, or did you have to have each machine that was brought?
Just one.
Okay. I was going to say, wow.
Basically, they wanted to know what was in each part, what was in the metal, what was,
Wow. Okay. I would not have guessed that. I would have thought that when I think of Japan, I think of tea is the culture. And I would have thought that maybe coffee, but I also, when I was working there and we were opening up it was obvious that the Japanese market they embraced Starbucks.
Well, yeah. Japan was a big coffee consuming country. It was like third or fourth in the world. They had these stores called Kisaten, which basically where men went to consume coffee and smoke cigarettes. And coffee was very important there. The quality of their coffee was really good. And there were other competitors kind of like us that were already open there. And, we had a different point of view, and we just believed, and I believed that Japan was work. I was scared, I wasn't betting the company, but I was betting my reputation because I chose Japan as the first market. And so, but it worked, amazing.
So there was also a story that I read. So one of the things when my timeline at Starbucks was when Frappuccino was rolled out.
Right.
And I was reading a story, once again, you hands-on. You were down in Southern California visiting a store.
Yeah.
This is what I read. So I'm going to ask you to validate my story. I read that you were, I want to say Santa Monica.
That's right. It was. 3rd Street.
And you walked, and as the article read, you walked in and you asked somebody, and we'll say the manager, why there was a blender in the store.
Yeah. It wasn't quite like that. It was actually, it was Dina Campion had invited me down to visit. She was the district manager down there. And I went to visit her, and she took me on a tour of our stores because we had just had a few stores at that time. And then on a tour of some competitor stores. And one of the competitor stores, she brought me a drink. And she said, we're getting people coming into our store every day asking for a drink like this. We have nothing like it. And so I said, really? How many drinks do you think we could sell a day? She said, at least 30 per store per day. That was pretty good because these drinks were like $3-4 a drink.
Right.
I said, that's a great idea. Let me take it back to Seattle and see if I can't get people to agree that we should test something like this. And I took it back to Seattle, and there was complete rejection of us doing it because it wasn't coffee. Yeah. And so, Dina was disappointed. I was disappointed, but I let it go. And then Dina called me back about a month later after we'd rejected it. Said, can you come down and visit again? And so I went down and visited her again. And she said, go sit down on one of the bar stools, which I did. And she brought me 3 little sample cups. And she said, try these. And I took a sip and I said, Dina, this tastes remarkably like the drink we tried at the competitor store. And I said, how did you do this? And she says, well, we went and bought the blenders. We bought the non-fat milk solids. We bought the chocolate. We bought everything and we fiddled with it. And we came up with this drink. And I said, are you trying to get me fired? And she said, no, but we have to test this, Howard. We're getting about 30 to 40 people a day coming in. This is killing us. They just walk out when we don't have anything like it. So it's one of those things that you do sometimes in life. You have to make a decision that goes against the grain or goes against somebody else's deal. And I always believe as long as you're not poisoning anybody or not breaking laws, that you ought to be able to try things. So I said, okay, try it, but don't tell a soul. No signage up on top. Your baristas can talk about it. You can have little signs on the counter or something like that. I try it. I want you to call me every night and tell me how it's going, because if it's not going well, we're going to get rid of it real quick or somebody finds out, particularly Schultz. And so it just started, and she not only sold 30 drinks a day, but by the third week, she was selling 70 drinks a day per store. That was huge. And I'm thinking to myself, I am a brilliant guy, But it was Dina Campion that made it happen. It wasn't me. All I did was give her cover to do it. And so then after we had that, I said, we got to roll this out. So I brought her and her team up to Seattle and called another meeting, and Howard Schultz came, and the head of marketing, a guy named George, and George was the one that really didn't want it. And so I had to bring in the sample cups, and everybody tried it. And George got really mad at me. He said, Howard, I'm the head of product development. You're not. I told you we weren't going to do this. You stop this now. And I looked at Howard. I said, give me 90 days. If you don't like it in 90 days, if you just don't like the smell, we'll get rid of it. And I've been in retail long enough. If something's selling, you never get rid of it. Howard hated it. He was for the same reason. He didn't think it was coffee. And it wasn't. Frappuccino, we put coffee in it.
Sure.
But we sold it without coffee. And he and it was blended. He didn't think we should do it. I remember, the arguments we had over it, but it became 20% of our sales at one time.
What I remember was it, in my opinion, it gave the stores a PM in the afternoon.
Yeah, that's what it did.
People came in. They might not have come. They might have gone into Starbucks and grabbed their morning cup of coffee on the way to work. Maybe go back in the lunchtime, but after lunch, the stores were pretty empty.
Yeah.
And this brought more, it sold. Yeah. And then not only that, it's a massive line of products for the company now.
We were a little younger. That made a difference too. So we attracted younger high school, college, kids coming in to get that drink. And it was a blowout success without a question.
So that brings me to the question I warned you about before I pushed record. When I started there was a product that had launched and had failed quite quickly. And personally, I loved it. What is your opinion on Mazagran?
Mazagran. I have a bottle of Mazagran and those things that you bury in plexiglass. It's solid. Yeah. And I have it sitting on my desk, not here, but in Seattle. And I look at that thing every day and I remind myself how from great failure can come great success. We all thought that product was going to be a blowout success. We did research. It was a joint venture with Pepsi. The bottle was beautiful. It was a coffee cola. It went out, and 3 weeks later, we knew it was dead. We liked it, but nobody else liked it, and so, but it spawned bottled Frappuccino, right? Without that, we wouldn't have thought about doing bottled Frappuccino. Bottled Frappuccino has been a great success. So, you try things, it doesn't work, you go on. From failure comes success.
Thank you for that, because one of my questions I love to ask guests are, what did you think was a great idea that didn't work? Because you almost always learn some valuable lesson.
Absolutely.
And I remember when I first started there, somebody gave me a bottle of this and they said, try it. I think it was like a hazing thing. Like they were thinking I was going to spit it out and be like, I really liked it.
Well, a lot of us liked it, but
I really liked it. And I'm like,
Shantico, that chocolate, it was hot chocolate.
Oh yes,
a little cup, and it was like drinking a chocolate bar, only melted, and we loved it. We thought it was fantastic. Hey, people, it was a good product. Both these products were good product, but there was just no acceptance for them for two different reasons. But so what?
But like you said, out of the Mazagran came the seed of bottled Frappuccino.
Yeah, exactly.
And also, wasn't it how they we won't go down the technical rabbit hole on that. But that was my question to you, and I thank you. I couldn't have expected a more amazing answer from you. Another question I like to ask my guests, and I jokingly say, and I hope you appreciate this. I jokingly ask the question, where's your favorite place, or what's your favorite cup of coffee? If you're a coffee drinker, and I always jokingly say, please don't say Starbucks, just because it's such the answer. But with you, I'm going to expect that you're going to say Starbucks, but I want to change my question to you. Where's your favorite Starbucks location?
My favorite Starbucks location. Boy, that's a hard question to answer, because I've been involved in so many openings of stores, and they all have their different drumbeat. They all are unique in their own way. Oh, let's see. What would I say my favorite Starbucks location would be?
Or let me take you off the hook and not say your favorite.
No, let's say you don't have to take me off the hook.
You're on the hook.
I would say Shibuya in Japan.
Okay, so why is that?
Because it was the most difficult store to make work. It had only 900 square feet of service area, and we had to do 2,000 customers a day through 900 square feet. And the difficulty of making, that's where we put the first semi-automated espresso machines in, and we had to do it. We didn't have a choice, So it's not because it's somehow more beautiful than the rest. It's that it was a challenge to do. It's where we broke some more rules by putting in those semi-automated espresso machines that Schultz hated. And it worked in 900 square feet. It was amazing.
Okay.
And so it's for that reason. I have other stores that I think are just incredibly beautiful, and that usually for me, though, it's always the people.
Okay.
It's always the one I'm closest to. Like I live right now, I'm up in Anacortes, so there's a store downtown Anacortes and one in Burlington. Those two stores I go to, so I love the people in there because I'm home.
So when you go to the Anacortes or Burlington store, what are you ordering?
A triple tall Americano, double cup, no room.
Very specific. Yeah, I like that.
That's what I drink. You can count on one. Frappuccino, I pushed it. All that stuff. I probably have drinking 3 Frappuccino in my life. Right? I used to drink cappuccinos.
Okay.
And I still do once in a while, but hardly ever. I never drank lattes, and I never drank mochas or anything like that ever. I mean, I'd had them, I'd sipped them, to try them, but I'm a black coffee drinker, and my favorite coffee is Ethiopian Harar.
So when you're at home, how do you prepare? Do you drink coffee at home?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Cup right.
How do you prepare your coffee at home? What do you?
Espresso machine, and I make Americanos.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a really nice Jura espresso machine, and it's an amazing piece of equipment, and it does a great job.
Okay. How do you feel about the Clover machines?
I think Clover is good. I mean, Clover was just an automated way of doing a really clean press pot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, where they took out all the grounds were taken out and everything. It's just really clean, but I like it. I think it produces an interesting cup of coffee. It's not my cup of coffee. It's too clean for me. I want it. I want it to bite a little bit, a little granulated. Yeah.
Okay.
So
when we moved to Wenatchee from the Tacoma area a few years ago, first time we came over here, stopped at Starbucks, and you can ask my wife, she was like, oh, he's like a kid, because one of the Wenatchee locations has a Clover machine. And I was like, oh my God, Tacoma didn't have any that I knew of at that time.
Yeah.
And I always just thought the Clover was a fascinating way of bringing and presenting other coffees too. That was the thing about it.
We could do it, an expensive way to make a cup of coffee. It was one coffee at a time, one cup, but it's good. It's interesting. I mean, it's not going to discolor your teeth. You know what I mean?
All right. So let me ask you, have you ever been to, is it on Pike or Pine, the roastery location?
Yeah. On Pine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I describe that as coffee meeting Las Vegas and Disneyland and smashed together.
Yeah, exactly.
I think if I lived in Seattle, that is not where I would go to have a cup of coffee. No. I would absolutely visit it, but I would not go there to have a cup of coffee. But my most favorite, not only coffee experience, but food experience came from sitting at the counter. And the barista's name was Lincoln. He was from Spokane. I'm sitting there with my friend Jim Hunger, who I met when I started working at Starbucks, and we're having a siphon press. Yeah. Each of us had a siphon press, and they walked by with a tray in a highball glass with one ice cube in it and coffee. And I'm like, what's that? And he goes, oh, that's our whiskey aged Guatemalan or something to that effect. Right. I go, I'd like one of those, please.
Yeah.
I had no idea what I was about to experience. It was the most magical food experience I've ever had in my life. Wow. It was absolutely delicious. And like I said, I'm there with my friend Jim. We're walking around. I see that the coffee is for sale. And since I'm staying with my friend Jim and his mother's a friend of mine, I said, I'd like, it was in half-pound bags. I said, I'd like 2 pounds, please. So I bought 4 bags. And I didn't check that it was $80 a pound. Had a little sticker shock. Yeah. And I must say, I gave the coffee to them. I, each gave them a half a pound. And then I came home and I was trying to make coffee at home with it. And I failed miserably. Yeah. But I will say that is my absolute favorite food experience in my world. And I know that those were created after your time being active there, but those are almost like amusement parks for coffee fans.
Yeah,
aren't
they are, no question. They're so interesting, very expensive to build, and
I can't imagine why.
Incredibly complex, and but it sends a message. People love it, and that store is busy all the time. I'm always amazed. I hardly ever go there. Only if I have a friend coming into town, I take them up there to see it, show them that store.
The one I'd like to see is the one in Chicago.
Yeah. Well, it's like 4 stories or something.
4 stories. I was like,
yeah, and I know that building well. That was a crate and barrel building.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So during your time at Starbucks, you now are you've written 2 books.
Yeah.
You have, servant leadership, conscious capitalism. You talk about One Hat.
Yeah.
How did you develop those concepts? And I don't, they're not necessarily, I don't think conscious capitalism, you coined that.
I didn't coin that phrase. It was John Mackey from Whole Foods.
So, but how did your time at Starbucks lead you to these?
I brought it with me.
You brought it with you?
Yeah, I didn't. I was 40 when I joined Starbucks. I was 44 years old. I was pretty well formed. I'd been studying servant leadership for, at that time, 20 years.
Okay.
And from Robert Greenleaf coined the term servant leadership, and so I wanted to be a conscious competent at servant leadership. I wanted to be able to understand it. I want to be able to teach it. And so I brought that with me, and that's what I tried to drive at Starbucks. I just believe that was a way to lead an organization, is that you served your people first before you expected them to serve you. And so, that was really important to me, and I was relentless about it. One of the advantages I had was I had a lot of responsibility in a small company, and I could make things happen there, and So I did, and I was not going, I wasn't going to let go of that because it was what mattered to me. Before I joined Starbucks, I was looking to, like I told you, I was looking to buy a company, and I had this list of all the things that I wanted inside this company that I was going to buy, how I wanted to operate it. Everybody got to vote, in their own area of expertise and give input in any area. And that I turned that into the person who sweeps the floor should choose the room.
Mm-hmm.
That everybody would get equity in the company, that everybody would be an owner of the company. And Howard and I agreed on all those things. And that's what made me want to be there, and, we had certainly different management styles and different views of how to lead, that were sometimes conflicting. Really conflicted, but that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to run a company like that. And so that's what we drove. And Orrin was that way too.
Well, and certainly during my time there, that was the culture.
Yeah.
And it was unlike anything I had experienced. Cause I started there in 97.
Yeah.
And so I was in my mid 30s, and I started off, I was probably one of the first non-Starbucks managers to be in the help desk in the IT department. So I was definitely an outsider at first.
Yeah.
And that didn't last very long, in the sense that I was, the culture there, it was great. It was, deeply embedded in all the partners I worked with. They believed it.
That was why I say the people were my day job, the business was my night job. There became a point in time where that is what I focused on, period. And, I gave the same speech 1,000 different times in 1,000 different ways, but always it said people first, coffee second. And it was hard to get fired at Starbucks for missing your numbers. It was easy to get fired at Starbucks if you messed with the people. And, that is still important to this day. It hasn't been a perfect place. It's had its ups and it's had its downs, and we've made lots of mistakes along the way, and didn't always treat people as well as we should have. And, I regret those times, but for the most part, we self-corrected, we self-corrected. And, I'm proud of the company. I'm really proud of how they handled COVID. They kept baristas on, they kept their health care benefits even when they weren't working. They paid people for a long period of time when they weren't working. They did everything they could to help people through it. And that not very many companies did that. And I'm proud of that.
No, you're right. And that's something to be proud of. What was your motivation to becoming an author?
I wasn't really that motivated to do it. Yeah, there were two women that worked for the company. One headed up marketing for international. Another one was a consultant that we'd use. And they kept saying, I had these quotes on my wall. I was famous for having hundreds of quotes on my office wall. And they'd come in and say, why don't we put these all into a book? And I said, you're kidding me. I can't write. I don't write. My English teacher would have said the only reason I would ever have my name on a book is if I had written it there myself. So somebody known whose it was. So they kept saying, do it. And they just drove me nuts. And I finally said to them, if you're so interested in me writing a book, why don't you write it for me? So they started the process of doing that. And I had kept, through my whole career, I had this file that it grew over time. And it finally got to, really about a foot thick.
Wow.
I'd put little notes in there, just ideas that came to me, quotes that I'd seen, thoughts that I had. Sometimes they were little scraps of paper into this file. And so that became the framework for the book. I took that file and I started throwing them on the floor in different piles for different subjects, different.
Okay.
And those became the chapters of the book. And that's how it started. Now, one of them got pregnant and moved on. And the other one got a big consulting agreement, didn't have time to do it. And so here I was left with the beginning of this book, and I hired somebody that they introduced me to, a woman named Janet Goldstein, who really was the writer. We did it together, but I was not even close to her skills. And but what I had were the ideas, and right. I had the stories and what it was. And so that's how came. I would never call myself a writer. I got better at it as time went on. Then the second book still had a lot of help, but I got better at it. I'm starting to work on a third book right now.
You are. So what can you share what
it's basically, I've been posting on LinkedIn and Twitter for 5 years now, every day. So I've got thousands of these items. And so we're going to take probably 100 of them and put them in a book and put stories with each, my most favorite ones and the ones that the people like the best, and tell stories behind them, where they came from and what they're about. And
may I put you on the spot and ask you to give an example?
Well, let's see. What would be one? I haven't even, you're way ahead of me on it. Well, let's take the person who sweeps the floor should choose the broom.
Okay.
It came from because growing up, when I was working, I had this tremendous desire to matter. I wanted to make a difference, and I wanted to be respected for that idea that I mattered and that my ideas mattered. And I always felt that other people should too. And so, I always believe that if you go out and you hire somebody, give them room, let them fly, tell them what you expect from them, tell them why we're here, what's the purpose of this place. But don't tell them how to do their job. Get out of their way and knock the hurdles down. And so it's those kind of stories and those things. Frappuccino, that's how Frappuccino came about. Was, the person, it was Dina and her broom, basically. She had goals to accomplish, and her idea was she had to grow the business, and this was a way of growing the business. And so it's those kinds of things that we're going to do.
Okay.
It's going to be a simple book, because I'm a simple person. And it's going to be a fun read. It's going to be one of those things that you can sit down on your toilet and probably read in a night. And then you go back over it saying, hey, I like this one. I want to learn more about this.
Okay. Well, I hope my editor doesn't lead that with we always start off the episodes with a quote from the episode, where we'll take a snippet. Let's not lead with that one. Okay. I just think the Magic Cup.
Yeah.
I just finished that. Actually, I finished that yesterday.
Yeah.
What inspired you to write that?
Anger.
Okay.
I left when I retired from Starbucks, I was angry. I was angry at Howard, and I was angry because we did all those layoffs that I didn't think that we needed to do. And I was just angry about a lot of things about that. And over time I let it go, but that's where it started. I just, that was the idea, the pink slips floating down from heaven and the board of directors not knowing what was going on, a guy that was running the company not caring. It wasn't that Howard didn't care, he did, but I was angry at him, and that's where it came from. And it was, I was depressed for 2 years after I left Starbucks. Because, I always used to say to people, Starbucks is not you and you're not it, but I fell into the trap. It was me, and it mattered to me as much as it mattered to Howard. And so it came out of there, and I wanted to write, fiction, but that was really based in truth. All of that book is based, it's fiction. It's where Harry Potter meets business, so to speak. But it was all about leadership. It was all about this idea that you care about your people, that that you don't tell people lies, you don't do layoffs when they're not necessary, you do the right thing, and the boogeyman of the spider chasing you, that's your fear. That's what it is fear. They're not real. I went through all those layoffs. That was just fear. That was reacting, being fearful of what we thought was wrong when it wasn't what it was. Howard thought that it was operations that was at fault. He said, there's something wrong with operations. I don't know if you were there then, but
I was not.
But he wanted to change a whole bunch of things. There were about 10 things. I won't go through them all. But it wasn't those things. It wasn't the problem. I mean, were the stores dirtier maybe in some places? Yeah, of course. Those things happen. And it wasn't the people. It was the economy, stupid. And we just felt it earlier than other people did. That's all. And that's what it was. And so it came out of that spot. And I was trying to tell the story, about that. It wasn't just about Starbucks. It was about other times other
Okay.
places I'd been to and other people I'd reported to my life.
You grew up in the Seattle area.
Yeah.
You spent most of your life in the Northwest.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So when you're not, well, what do you do for fun and excitement? What about the Northwest do you find to be enjoyable?
The water, the Puget Sound, the San Juan Islands, the Gulf Islands of Canada. I live right on the water in Puget Sound and up by Anacortes. I have a little 20-foot skiff, and as soon as crab season opens, I'm out there every day.
You're out there every day
on my beach. I dig clams. I'm not so much of a fisherman anymore. I still fish once in a while, but it's the sheer beauty of it, and it's the water. I just love it.
And has that always been true for you? Or
Yeah,
is that
pretty much. My father was a great fisherman, and he used to take me when I was 5 years old. And in those days, Elliott Bay, you'd go out in Elliott Bay, and you'd go out about just at daybreak, and by 11 o'clock in the morning, you had 12 fish, silvers, right?
Wow.
That bay was full of salmon. And then we'd go up to the south end of Woodby Island and fish Possession Point. No Point. We fish out in front of Edmonds. We fish up Bush Point, which is on the west side of Woodby Island. And so, we'd stay on Woodby Island for the summer every year, and big clams. And I mean, it's that. I've always been attached to it. I've always had a boat of some kind.
You've always had a boat. So what was your favorite boat? Was there one that was,
the last boat? It was a 73-foot Ocean Alexander. And it was a kind of a trawler style, and it was a fantastic boat. And I had a stroke, and it overwhelmed me running the boat. And I said, it's time to sell it. And so we decided we'll get a place in the water instead of having a boat.
So the 73-foot boat, that's to me, that's a very large boat.
Yeah.
Did you captain it yourself?
My wife and I ran that boat. Yeah. Yeah. I didn't want to go for a ride, I wanted to run the boat. And so, I work on all of it? No, but I could change the oil, and I could troubleshoot all sorts of problems. I could keep us from sinking, which it almost did once.
Really?
I made lots of mistakes. One time I ran it aground up in Alaska,
Okay. Do you mind sharing how did you manage to do that?
A boater, I was looking on the charts, and there was I was trying to get back to Ketchikan, and there was this pass called Rocky Pass. Now I know why it's called Rocky Pass. So I said, well, okay, I see it's charted and it was marked. And I thought, I can do this. I can get through there. I knew it was going to be tight, but I think I could do it. So I pull in and we anchor outside the Rocky Pass the night before. And I get up in the morning, I'm getting the boat ready to go. And I was looking at the tide charts and looking at the time, and I misjudged the time by 2 hours.
Okay.
It was a lot shallower than I thought it was going to be. So I started going down Rocky Pass, and all of a sudden, one of my engines shuts down, and my boat hits sand. So the prop had hit a rock, and when that happens, it just shuts the engine down. So I said, "Oh shit!" So then, what am I going to do now? So I waited until the tide came up, and I tried to back out. The other prop hits the rock. So now I'm in trouble. I got one prop that I can get, and I'm trying to get out of it. Finally, I got out of there, and I limped back to Ketchikan, and $30,000 later, trying to fix the bottom of the boat and fix the props, which were never right. I had to get back to Seattle to get them remade. So, that was, dumb and dumber.
Oh my gosh. Oh, wow. All right. Besides the water, what else do you and your wife like to do? What's entertaining for you these days?
Entertaining for me today? Oh God, I'd like to tell you that I'm a real hobbyist. I'm not. I never have been.
Okay.
My hobby
That's okay.
To walk the malls and look at what's going on in retail. I like that. I think spending time with my grandkids, I like to do that. And spending time with my wife. And this last year, we've never spent this kind of amount of time together. We've never cooked as many meals at home as we did this last year, but we did. And so I like that. But I like to go for walks on the beach. I like to, go for walks with the dogs. My dogs that changed my life. These two dogs I got them after my doctor said, you need a dog. you need to slow down. You're
Okay.
going to kill yourself. And so I got the first dog, and certainly changed my life. And then we got the second one, it really changed my life. And they're my buddies,
That's
So,
and are your grandkids in the area?
yeah, my kids both live in Madrona area, Seattle.
Okay.
And I have 6 grandkids. And so
Okay.
one was graduating from high school, getting ready to go to college. The oldest one is going to college already. And then I've got 4 more.
Yeah, my 2 grandchildren live in Europe, so I don't get to see them very often. But you get to, with technology now, they can do what you.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Never could do that, but now you can do it.
You said something. You said you like to walk the mall and look at retail.
Yeah.
And so, what I'm about to ask you, you would say the logic. Your answer will be you wouldn't do it, but play along.
Yeah.
If you were going to open a business today, what would it be?
So I was going to open a business today. You mean this product? You mean, or?
Yeah, well, just looking at the way you're looking at the world, what you see things through your eyes.
Yeah.
What would you do?
That would be something to do with food, not necessarily a restaurant. I think there's a real opportunity for a miniature store in neighborhoods, like a 7-Eleven, but not a 7-Eleven. It's high quality. It's pre-prepared meals. Or, where you could carve off a piece of turkey that was in the cake or something. It'd be small, easy to get through, but, and we're starting to see them pop up. If you go to New York, you see them, and you certainly see them all over Europe. I think that's a wave of the future. I think we're going to be doing a lot more of that. And we're not, I think this home delivery thing is going to be problematic because the cost of doing it is huge. And the companies that are doing it are basically doing it on the backs of people.
Mm-hmm.
And that isn't going to last. And so now if you order a pizza online, for a $20 pizza, I've paid over $40 by the time it gets to my house. I just don't see how people are continue to afford it or why they would do it. I'm not going to do it. I'll go pick it up. For $20, I can spend 15 minutes, or whatever it is, or I can walk down the street or whatever it happens to be. But I think this idea of just a little neighborhood kind of high quality convenience place to go get meals.
Okay.
Or a nice bottle of wine or, something like that.
So kind of, for lack of but like a small convenience model, like a Whole Foods, but
only really small. They don't sell soap. They don't, right? They're not
literally.
They're not selling toilet paper. It's not that kind of place. It's focused around food.
Okay. What else when you walk the mall? What else are you noticing? Because I don't go to the mall. That's one thing. I've never been a mall fan, so I'm curious. What's your observations of walking through the mall? I don't know when the last time you walked through a mall. When was the last time you walked through a mall?
About a month ago.
Okay. What have you noticed? What did you observe when you walk through? Does retail in the mall space seem healthy to you, or is it?
No, not at all. It's not. There's not. There's this lack of the internet has really changed the retail, and Amazon, without a question, has really changed retail. And I think what you see in the mall is less help than you used to see. You walk into a store, it's hard to find somebody to help you. There are not very many creative stores. The problem with the internet and Amazon is they're great at transaction. They're not very good at bringing you something that's unique, or that, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And so, it used to be you'd go to the mall and you'd shop and you say, wow, look at that. You don't get that experience very often anymore.
You'd walk past
too much sameness, And I was on the board of the Gap for about 8 years. And I used to always say, you can't make it. You can't build, you have no soul if all it is about 70% off. Right. And so why are you here? What are you here to do? And I think the big chains, particularly in retail, have fewer stores, but more creativity,
Okay.
And
I remember growing up as a kid going to say Frederick and Nelson
right.
in downtown Seattle.
Oh, wow.
And
Me too.
and looking at the windows, and the displays were amazing.
Yeah.
And now when I walk through the mall, I see what you're saying, and I also see a lot of 30% off, closing soon, or clearance. This. Anyway,
I've got to leave you. I'm sorry to tell you, but
we've run over our time. Again, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing what you've shared, and I am looking forward to the third
opportunity. I love your style. You're a gentle soul.
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
You have a wonderful day.
Okay. Take care, buddy.
Okay. Take care.
Thanks.
Join us next time for another episode of the Exploring Washington State podcast.